This was about 10 months ago now. I was spending a few days with my best friend from college in his hometown. I'll call him Chris for privacy. It was a really small town from what I was used to, but Chris was showing me around and we went to the bars and just hung out and had a good time on my last night there. He mentioned a place he'd been wanting to explore for a while but hadn't had anyone to go with. It was some abandoned house or town he knew of a few miles out in the woods. We used to go exploring and backpacking all the time in college, so it sounded like a pretty cool idea. Only 30 minutes after hearing about it, we were already trekking through a path in the woods. We still had some sunlight left, but we brought headlamp just in case. About 20 minutes of walking, the trail ended and we had to follow a very faint footpath through the trees. It went on for another hour before we made it. We could see a house out in the distance, and as we got closer we could see several more behind it. It wasn't what either of us expected, though the houses didn't really look that old. They looked weathered and heavily damaged, but had modern siding and stuff like that that made them look kind of like any other house. There was even a tiny gravel road leading from each of the homes. It looked like maybe they were trying to build a community and something went wrong, causing them to abandon it. Other people had been there before us, though evident by the graffiti on the sides of the houses. Chris and I went up to the first house. Looking through the open doorway, there were weeds growing through the floorboards, but it was otherwise empty before we stepped in, though a loud slamming sound echoed through the woods. Both of us jumped and stared down the gravel road that we thought it came from. After that sound, though it was quiet, we had no idea what it was, but after seeing nothing we went inside the house. There wasn't too much to look at, but what made it so interesting was trying to figure out why anyone would abandon it. The house looks like it would have been nice before it was left behind. After walking around the first floor, we went upstairs to the second. Oddly, it got way darker upstairs, like no windows were letting in any light. The hallway was short with only 2 doors and what looked like an attic in the ceiling. We went up to the first door and opened it, seeing another empty room, but we were quickly interrupted by hearing something downstairs. There were shuffling footsteps coming through the grass and up to the house we were in. We stayed quiet, but we were sure that whoever they were had probably seen us outside. But why would they try to approach us? They walked up to the front doorway, then stopped just before they entered. Hello, we didn't respond. I just want to talk, no harm at all. He sounded older and almost like he was missing teeth or something, stumbling a bit over his words. After that, though, there was a whole minute of silence. He didn't say anything else, but we didn't hear him leave either. We waited another few minutes, still not hearing anything, before Chris quietly went down the staircase and looked over at the front door. He turned and looked back at me with a pale face. There's nobody there. I quickly went to see for myself, but he wasn't lying. He was nowhere in the doorway. We carefully made our way down and over to the doorway. Looking out, there was on line of footprints in the grass coming from where the other houses were, but no footprints leaving. Both of us figured it out at the same time and bolted for the tree, knowing the guy must have been hiding inside the house. Somehow we got out of the woods as fast as we could and went back to his place. Who that guy was and why he wanted to talk to us, we don't know. I'm sure if he'd found us, though, we probably wouldn't be here. Lee was driving across the country for a kind of hectic trip. I had to get some things done for work at an office way up in Maine, and decided that while I was there already on the road trip, that I'd visit some of my friends and family on the East Coast. During my 4th day of driving, I was spending most of that day going through Pennsylvania. There were a lot of cool towns, but most of the drive was through nothing, and to get where I was going, it was taking me on a lot of side routes, which were these long and empty, one-lane highways. As it was getting late, rain started coming down and my fuel was running low. I hadn't passed any gas stations in a while, so I figured there had to be one soon, but again this road wasn't really going through any towns. I continued through the rain for another 30 minutes and barely through the fog and saw a sign for a gas station, and a couple moments later it showed up ahead of me. It was off the side of the road, nestled in the tree, and was really small. It only had 2 pumps and a tiny concession building behind it. Having no other choice, I pulled in and parked, getting out and opening up my gas tank. When I pulled the pump off and tried to insert my card, though it didn't work, I wiped the dusty screen and tried to see what it was saying, but it didn't say anything. It wasn't even on. I then went over to the only other pump and it was also off. Frustrated, I looked around. With it raining and being well past sunset, it was really hard to make anything out. Sure, the place looked old and outdated, but so did a lot of other gas stations. After a closer look, though, I noticed a small light inside the concession building. Hoping it was a worker that could help me, I stepped out from under the overhang covering the pumps and ran up to the door. Moisture was covering the entire glass door, so I couldn't see inside. All I could see was the light reflecting through the glass. I grabbed the handle and it screeched open. When I stepped inside, I immediately knew something was wrong. The store shelves were empty and some even knocked over, and the place just looked like it was destroyed. The light was coming from somewhere in the back though, and was now clearly some sort of lamp or something. Definitely not a regular store light. I was only in there for a few seconds, and after seeing all of that, I quickly stepped back outside. I didn't know what was going on in there, but I knew it couldn't be anything good and definitely not helpful for my situation. As I backed out of the store and into the rain, I turned around toward my car, but a person was standing next to it. They were completely drenched in water and were just looking around my car and into the windows. "Hey, what are you doing?" I yelled. As I quickly made my way up to them, they shot a look at me, then moved their eyes behind me. I turned back to look at the building. The front door was opened and a man came out into the rain. He get help. While I waited, though, I looked at the outside of my car and saw a huge line going across the door. It looked like the man had run a knife along it. When I drove away, police informed me later that night that the gas station I was at was not in service for at least a decade. Other than that, though, nothing else came of it, and what would have happened if I didn't get out in time is left to nothing but